Hey, this is Mike doing another video on my Easy Set Intex pool. This is season number 2. I had it stored for the winter and I'm getting ready to put it up for the second summer. So this video is primarily for beginners. So if you're thinking about buying a pool or you have one and you're looking for tips or ideas or suggestions, this is going to be a good beginner's video. If you've had a pool for years, this probably wouldn't interest you. But if you are a beginner like me, because I'm learning too, then you probably want to watch this video because there's a lot that I learned having not known anything about pools. So watch the whole thing. It's about 30-35 minutes long, and try to watch it in the highest resolution you can. I recorded this with a GoPro in 4K, so depending on your internet speed, if you can watch this thing in 4K, it's nice. Otherwise it's going to be grainy and fuzzy, so try to click on your resolution and get it as crystal clear as you can. All right, step 1. For a lot of people, if you're going to sit your pool on the ground, you do need to have some kind of ground protection, and that may be a tarp, that may be a bed of sand. Whatever your situation is, it may be different from mine. Now, because I have concrete and because I actually put down a non-skid paint, which is that dark gray paint you see, it's basically, it feels like sandpaper. It's a little rough to the touch. But I found out that when I spread out this felt liner that goes on the ground, that's going to go in between the slab and the pool, I found out that that rough textured paint actually helped keep it spread tight. I was actually able to spread it out and keep it tight like a drum, because it holds it in place. It's almost like Velcro. Okay, step 2, break out the pool. Now, this is really important. When you are setting your pool up, you want to make sure that the 2 inlets that are there and your jet line up. You don't want to have the holes in the pool that accept those pipes to be over here. That's really, really important, because when you're setting this pool up, those connections from the pool to the pipes have to be in the right location. Okay, so as you can see, I've got my 2 suction ports that are lined up pretty much where that is, and then here's my jet that's going to be connected to that hose there. So that's really important that you get this in the right orientation. Now, something that I realized, or that I discovered, which was purely unintentional, is that when I spread this liner down, because of the fact that this has a sandpaper-like feel to it, and I was able, like I said a second ago, that this held, it stayed down by itself without moving, it really helped to have that, because when I was pulling on this pool, it's vinyl, it slides, but it prevents the liner from rippling. It prevents it from wrinkling or folding in on itself. So every time I grabbed this pool and pulled it, everything slid and this did not move at all. And that was really, really nice, because just imagine if this thing kept wrinkling, this mat, as I was pulling and positioning this pool, then I'd have to fold it up and reposition this several times. So this staying exactly where it was at, due to the rough texture of the slab, that really, really helped. So now I'm going to inflate the ring. That's the next step. What I did is I bought this pump. It's called Air Boss, and it's a nice little pump. I just connect it to my courtesy receptacle over here. As you can see, I got the cord and it's plugged in right there. That's why it's good to have a courtesy receptacle out at your pool, because you're going to need to fill this with air periodically. Now, I've been fortunate. I have not had to fill this thing over and over and over. In fact, I don't think I've refilled it a single time last season. The ring held up for me. It did not lose air at all. But now it's time to air it up. That's the next step. Okay, so as you see, I kind of got it spread out, and I've got the hose in there putting water in. Now, this is where it's super, super, super important. You have to remember, it is still not adjusted, for me in particular, because of the slab, and I have to have the pool centered. I cannot put too much water in there. Once there's too much water in there, you're at the point of no return. The water is going to have to be emptied out, because I cannot pull the pool by myself and adjust it. You only want to let that water run for a few minutes. And the reason I'm doing that is because the weight of the water will actually help smooth out all those wrinkles in the middle. And then I'll shut the water off and go back and make my measurements and make sure that it's dead center. Now, after I stretch this thing and get the wrinkles out, that seam is going to be off. So I have to go back and check it again. But again, it's not overly difficult. I'm installing this pool, putting it up by myself. Intex recommends you have at least 2 or 3 people to do it. It's not a 2 or 3 person job. Not for me anyway. For most people, it may take several people to help out, but I can do it myself. It's a one-man job for me. So let's go on to the next step. It really needs to be wrinkle-free on the bottom. It does not matter if you have an easy set pool or a metal-sided pool, any above ground pool, that bottom liner should be flat as possible. If you have big folds, wrong. If you got a few little wrinkles, it's not the end of the world. But those little wrinkles you see will eventually iron out with the weight of the water. But it has to be as wrinkle-free as possible. And you literally only have a few minutes to do this. If you haven't accomplished this by the time you get an inch of water in there, it's too late. You got to start over, or you just fill it up and leave it. So I'm going to cut to the next section, so that way I can start smoothing out these wrinkles, and I'll be back in a second. Okay, I want to show you something. I don't know if you notice or not, but there is my 2 inlet hoses. And if you can see, there's the port and there's the port. That one is going to connect to the left hose that you see fairly easy. This one ended up being a little far off. In other words, the pool is shifted too far that way. It's not the end of the world. You get as close as you can. And if I have to put a longer piece of hose to go from that white PVC connection over to here, okay, it's not the end of the world. Same thing here. There is my jet, and there's the hose. Ideally, that jet should have been right there. It's okay. You just put a longer piece of hose, and it just goes from there to there. It's not the end of the world. What's more important is that I get this lined up with the deck, and I get it centered on the slab. You have to get on your hands and knees and physically push. You have to work the seams towards the edge. That's what you're doing. You're working them out towards the edge in all directions. And wear some shoes that you don't mind getting wet. You don't want to do this barefoot, because you actually need some grip. And these shoes have good grip. You want to be able to move. See that? See how I can move it? You want to keep doing that and getting all the wrinkles out towards the edge. All right, so when I get to a certain point in water elevation, which is usually about, I don't know, 2 foot. When I get 2 foot of water, I'll shut the hose off, and that's when I make my connections. Now, you can do it any way you like. I prefer to do it after the water's already at 2 foot. Why? Because it puts that jet right there, but it puts it pretty much right where I need it, as opposed to it being way down here. So I let it fill up with water, 2 foot. That port will be right there. I connect it. I'll go ahead and prep myself. I'll take that off, get a longer piece of hose, which I have backup hoses, and I'll make a longer one for this, but that port will be right about here. So I already know I'm going to need about 4 feet. Depending on what your water pressure is, I think, I'm trying to recall last year, I think it took 6 hours to fill this thing all the way up to mid donut. But that's just based on my water pressure. You may have more, you may have less, so your experience may be different. But it's 9 o'clock in the morning, and I know that I can have this thing filled up and connected and pump running before the end of the day. And that's the goal. Okay, a little side tip while it's on my mind. If you use any, if you have anything other than your bare hands while you are spreading this pool and you set something down, make absolutely sure that it's not under the pool, that you don't leave it there. And what I'm talking about in particular is I was using a tape measure to measure that seam from there to there, and I lost my tape measure. And if it's underneath the pool, and just say you can't find it, and you say, well, screw it, I'll find it somewhere. Well, what if it's under the pool? That's not good. You will not be able to lift the pool to get that tape measure out. You're not going to be able to do it. Okay, so just FYI, be smart. Make sure there is nothing under the pool. I don't care what it is. Your phone. Oh my God, can you imagine if you left your phone under the pool? So be smart. Don't have anything other than your bare hands when you're out there spreading this pool. You don't want anything to get trapped under the pool. Okay, I have a hose here. This is my discharge hose. And I bought this at Home Depot. I actually bought several of them. I think they're 50 foot a piece or 75 foot a piece. And basically what this is, it looks like a miniature fire hose. They're not expensive, they're pretty cheap. And they're made for pumps. Like if you have for a flooded area and they have a generator running a pump, that's what this is. And they connect end to end. And basically when I get ready to drain my pool, what I do is I come over here, and that is my discharge port. All I do is connect that hose to that, and I keep it flat. Okay, you can't be all twisted because it's going to be high pressure. And I run that hose all the way out through that gate, all the way out to the street in the gutter. And I turn the selector switch. It's dirty right now and I can't read because I don't have my glasses. But I turn the selector switch to waste. And then I turn the pump on. And what it's going to do is it's going to suck that water out through that pipe and all the way out to the street. I'm not going to flood my backyard. I mean, there's a smarter way to do it. You can do that if you want, but I didn't want to do it. And I remember vividly timing how long it took to dump the pool. Nearly 6,000 gallons of water took 1 hour and 30 minutes. That's it. So it took 1.5 hours to drain my pool at the end of the summer using several of these hoses. I don't know how much the hoses were. I don't know. They were 25 bucks, I think. And I got 3 of them to get all. I measured how far it was going to be all the way out to my curb. But that's how I emptied the water at the end of the summer when I wanted to put this pool up. Okay, so I've got a few hours before that water level gets to about a 2-foot level where I can start connecting my plumbing. So I thought I'd take this opportunity to give all of those people that are putting a pool up for the very first time some safety tips. Okay, now this is really important. If you've never had an above ground pool before, or any pool, then you really need to watch this little segment. I'll make it short, but these are safety tips to keep you safe and keep you out of the hospital. Okay, so pay attention, please. For all of you that already have a pool, you already know about the safety issues, but I'm going to go over this for the beginners. All right, let's talk about chlorine. Chlorine is basically an acid, and what it's going to do is it's going to keep that water clear. You have to have chlorine, otherwise your water is going to get cloudy and it's going to get algae. Now, this is the chlorine bucket that I had from last year. I've still got some left, and I've got 2 more buckets that I just bought. Now, for people that don't know about chlorine, chlorine is very, very powerful. And what I mean by that is you do not want to open the bucket and stick your face anywhere close to the opening of the bucket, because you're going to get a very strong whiff of the fumes from the chlorine. And if you get a strong enough breath of it, it could burn your lungs. Okay, and I mean that sincerely. It can knock the wind out of you, and you could end up with burnt lungs and be in the emergency room. So you have to be very cautious about chlorine. You have to know what it is, and you have to respect it. Okay, so when you open these buckets, I'm going to see if I can do this single-handedly here since I'm holding the GoPro. Okay, open it up and keep your face away from the bucket. You're going to get a strong odor. In fact, I can smell it already from here. Now, I'm not saying that you need to be scared of it. You don't have to be scared of it. And you can touch these tablets with your bare hands. Okay, but that's another safety issue. You got to remember, you're going to have residue on your hands. Okay, very, very important. Do not touch your face, and especially don't rub your eyes with that powdery residue on your hands, okay? You will get really bad burns on your skin or your eyes. Now, okay, you can wear some rubber gloves. That would be smart, okay? Just get a box of rubber gloves and keep them in your, or next to the bucket of chlorine. So when you're changing the tablets, you're using rubber gloves. Me, I'm hard-headed, I'm old school. I'm just gonna wash my hands afterwards. No harm, no foul. But you do not also want to rub your clothes. Imagine this as bleach. It's pretty much the same type of chemical as bleach in a sense that it will bleach out your clothes. If I was to rub my hands right now on my shorts and then go to wash my shorts, there'd be a bleached out mark right there, everywhere that I touched. It will destroy your clothes. Okay, so don't put tablets in your chlorinator and then go wipe your hands off on your pants, because now you've just destroyed your pants. Okay, so for those of you that don't know anything about chlorine, just be smart. Do not get a good strong whiff of chlorine tablets or powder, especially when you're going to add that shock. Make sure that it's not a windy day and you're downwind and that stuff's blowing in the breeze and it's getting in your eyes and in your lungs. You're gonna hurt yourself, okay? That's just safety 101. Now I'm gonna go rinse my hand off. Okay, there you go, good to go. So be smart about the chlorine. Okay, so one thing that I forgot to add in that little segment about the chlorine is the chlorinator that I have. So what we're gonna do, we're actually gonna grab this bucket and let's walk over here to my chlorinator, and I'm gonna show you how this thing works and talk a little bit about the process. So again, let me open this thing up. Okay, take this off. There we go. And if you look down in there, okay, it gives you an idea. It's just a cylinder and water flows through there and washes over the tablets. You can just take 8 of these, make sure it's sitting down in there flat, okay, and stack them up. That was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 is really all you need. I could fit a 9th one, but I don't really need it. Okay, and then when you put this on, make sure you see that rubber seal. Look, it comes off real easy, okay? And every now and then I'll lubricate it. In fact, I'll probably lubricate it one more time before I actually turn everything on. But I'm just doing this right now for video purposes. All right, stick that on there, tighten it up, and it's a wrap. How long does 8 tablets last? Well, 8 tablets, you got to remember, it depends on how often your pump is running, because it's slowly dissolving as water's flowing through there. So since I run my pump, it's on a timer, and I run the pump 3 hours on, 3 hours off. So within a 24-hour period, the pump is physically on 12 hours a day. So having said that, 8 tablets will last me 1 week. I'll come out there, take that lid off, and I'll put 8 more tablets in, because when I open that lid in a week, the tablets are gone. Or there might be a little chunk left in there. But 8 tablets lasts a week. Now, you may think, that's a lot of chlorine. No, it's really not, and I'll tell you why. From a money standpoint, it's actually pretty cheap. That large bucket that you saw in my shed, I bought that last summer. I paid about $100 for it, and I didn't even go through 2/3 of that bucket. There's still a bunch left in there. So for the time that I had my pool up and running, 3 months, 3.5 months, I didn't even go through that bucket. So since the bucket cost $100 last summer, that was last summer price, I bet I'm spending 75 cents a day to keep my pool chlorinated. 75 cents a day is pretty cheap to maintain a pool. That's pretty good. Now, that doesn't include the water cost, of course. And that's another question. People ask me, how much did it cost you to fill your pool up? What was the increase in your water bill? Well, again, it depends on where you live. But for me personally, in Austin, I saw an increase of $75 filling up 6,000 gallons of water. Now, that may be dirt cheap to some people, and that may be very expensive to others. And if you have land somewhere and you have well water, it didn't cost you anything then. But for me, living in the city, filling up that pool to almost a 6,000 gallon capacity, My increase in water bill was 75 bucks. So that was cheap. So anyway, that's the cost and the process of using those chlorinated tablets. Now again, I don't know if you saw my other video, there is another type of chlorinator that you can use, and I've got one. All right, it is this bad boy right here. And all you do is you put a tablet or two in this thing and it floats. It literally floats on the surface of the water. Now, some people like this better, but I bought it and it's never been used. I have never used it. Basically, chlorine will dissolve very, very slow. Those 3-inch tablets are going to dissolve and leach chlorine into the water very, very slow. It's too slow for me. I want my water thoroughly chlorinated, which is why I have that chlorinator that we just filled up with 8 tablets. So you can use this in addition to that other thing that I have, or you can use this in lieu of that other chlorinator. So some people like this, and that's fine for them. Maybe they have a smaller pool, but basically for the size of pool that I have, that float on the surface type of chlorinator does not work for me. I would rather have the one that I have. And people will say, well, yeah, but this thing is chlorinating all the time, as opposed to that one over there that's only chlorinating when the pump is running. Okay, well, that's true. The pump's not running all the time. So when the pump's not running, that thing's not chlorinating the water. But it is every 3 hours. Okay, so there is also this here that I use. This is basically just a powder form of that chlorine in the bucket. This is basically a shock. So when you hear people talk about shocking the water, this is what you want to put in when you initially fill your pool up. And the reason why is because once that pump gets turned on and the chlorination tablets are in that chlorinator, it may take an entire week for that water to stabilize, okay? It's chlorinating, like I just said, 3 on, 3 off, but it may take a full week for every ounce of water in that pool to be regulated with chlorine. So what this does, I take half of this bag and I sprinkle it. I just walk around the pool and sprinkle it in the water. Again, be safety conscious of this, and don't let that wind blow this stuff in your eyes or your face. But what that does is that chlorinates the water immediately, because it dissolves immediately in the water. So in addition to that pump starting up, which is throwing chlorinated water out into it, it has a dose of this to help stabilize the water. So once that pool gets up to capacity and I turn that pump on, I'm going to sprinkle half this bag in the pool, just walk around, sprinkle it in the water, it dissolves immediately, and that gives it a head start, which is what you need to do. And this stuff is cheap. It's only a few bucks. I think it was $3. So, but you don't need the whole bag. Don't overdo it. Read the instructions on the back and it'll tell you how much to add per how many gallons of water is in your pool. So anyway, just wanted to throw that at you. Now also, some people have asked me how I vacuum out my pool. You're going to have to vacuum it. Simply running your pump with chlorine is not going to keep the bottom of the pool clean. Stuff is going to settle. Dust blowing in the air is going to land on the surface of the pool water, and it's going to slowly settle down to the bottom. Pretty soon you're going to have a bunch of debris on the bottom. Now this is a vacuum head that is primarily used for an in-ground pool. Most people that have an above-ground pool probably cannot use this type. It's weighted. There's a lead under here, lead weights. It's very heavy, and you connect the pole, and then you connect your suction port hose or your suction hose to that. Excuse me. And most people that have an above-ground pool have an irregular bottom, because you either set it on the grass, or you set it on the dirt, or you set it on a bed of sand, and when you walk in that pool, you're making imprints with your feet. So although it's nice to the touch, to the what you feel underfoot, most people can't use this because the bottom of their pool is not flat. I can use this because my pool is on a concrete slab. So when I get ready to vacuum my pool, then all I do is come up the stairs, I hook up my pole, hook up the suction hose, and I vacuum that thing like I'm vacuuming an in-ground pool, because I'm elevated. I'm up here on the deck. So it's very easy for me to vacuum it out just like anybody would with a standard pool. So that's the slight benefit, I guess, small benefit if you want to call it that, of having your pool on a slab. I have a nice hard flat bottom that I can vacuum the pool, and I do it once a week. It only takes 10 minutes, but that's something that you're going to have to do. I got something else I wanted to show you. There's a lot of people online that said that you have to be careful of birds landing on this donut because their sharp little claws or little talons poke holes in this. Okay. I don't know where that rumor came from, but it's absolutely BS. Now, if you live out in the country somewhere and you got a barn owl that lands on there, yeah, those suckers are sharp, and those owls are big. If you got a buzzard or a crow or a bald eagle, yeah, I get it. They're gonna poke holes through it. But a little bitty sparrow landing on here, it's not gonna happen. That is thick, okay? There is no freaking way that a little bitty bird is going to poke holes in that plastic. So anybody that says so is full of it. At least I think what's going on is they're having leaks and they cannot figure how or where. So the logical thing for them is to say, well, it's the birds. No, it's not the birds, okay? I have bird feeders here. I got a bird feeder up top and I got bird houses. And when I fill that thing up with seed, you know, birds are messy and they put the seeds all over the floor, all over the ground. There's got to be 100 birds out here. And I had birds landing on the donut. Thank God they never shit on the donut, but they were all over the donut. I never had any problem. I went through an entire summer without one leak. I never even had to fill it because it got low, because it never got low. So anybody online that says, yeah, you got to watch out for the birds, you know, they'll poke holes in your ring. Okay, that's probably because, and I'm guessing here, that they're having leaks because they're just too rough on this pool. You have to remember, this is a cheap piece of junk pool. It's just a cheap pool. So if you abuse it, it's going to fail on you. So when you use a pool like this, an easy set pool that is basically the ring is what's holding it up, because it doesn't have metal supports. The ring is what holds the whole thing up from collapsing. You have to be careful with that ring, okay? Make sure you have no jewelry on, no watches, no rings. Make sure that you're not draped over it. Make sure you're not wearing cutoffs that have the zipper and the snap. And here you are, you're rubbing all over it and you're draped over it and you're diving in from the outside here. You're getting a running start, you're jumping in it, and that zipper brushes and the ring and it rips it. It's metal. Okay, so you got to think about stuff like that. If you're too rough on this pool, it will fail. But I promise you people, it is not because of those little bitty sparrows, okay? That's just a bunch of baloney, all right? Okay, so it's the next morning. It got late last night. It took longer than 6 hours to fill it up because I was running the sprinkler in the front yard. So I had water going in 2 different directions, but it's full of water. I have just started it up. So all I have to do is take some scissors and trim that white felt pad. I did it last year. It took about a half hour to go all the way around the pool, but I trim it back to where there's only just a little bit showing. It does need to be cleaned. There's some mold growing on the outside where I didn't quite get it all dry before I folded it up. So I just have some stuff I'll spray on there and it will look nice and pretty. It'll remove all of that. So as you can see, I've got the waterfall running, and let me climb up here. Yeah, that's a nice waterfall. Okay, as you can see, there's a lot of debris in the pool too. I have not set the skimmer up yet. I just turned it on. There's still a lot of work to do. I just turned the pump on. There's a lot of water down here, and the reason why is because I was wiping down all these pipes, just double checking everything. I can see that my pre-filter is just got a few bubbles. You never want to have a bunch of air in there. It needs to be solid water. Ideally, you shouldn't see any bubbles at all, but it'll get to that point eventually. They'll work their way out. This is full of chlorine tablets, so it's chlorinating. You see my my bond element has got water in it, so water's flowing through there. And what I'm doing is just looking for leaks. I see a few leaks. You can see one right there. Okay. Yep. And the reason there's a leak there is because, remember, I replaced this pipe with a longer one, and you see it's kind of hanging on the ground. So what I'll do is I'll probably bring it up and attach it up here some kind of way so it's hanging. I don't want it on the ground. And the same with this one here. This is the longer pipe that I put in because the distance between here and there, remember, this whole pool should have been shifted over about another 2 feet. So what I'll probably do is just zip tie this right here and it's off the ground. Okay. So I'm double checking everything. I have the correct pressure, which is 15 PSI. And I got everything wiped down. Once all of this water under here dries, I'll be able to see for sure if I have any leaks. I've already identified one. And remember, you can shut the system off and go back and fix those leaks one at a time, and you're gonna fine tune it. And what's gonna happen is you'll end up with no leaks, and then a month later you'll be like, oh crap, there's another leak. It's not a big deal, especially if it's coming from a hose clamp. Those are easily fixable, okay? But the good news is that nothing busted from that freeze, okay? All the pipes are good, the motor's good, the impeller's good, the pre-filter, this canister, nothing froze because there was no water in any of it. So I got a lot of cleanup to do. As you can see, it's pretty nasty under there. I'm gonna wipe everything down, make some adjustments, and that's pretty much the setup process for the pool.